Hello. We're going to continue our lectures on personalities and library history, and this will be our last lecture in the series. I've touched on a lot of male individuals who impacted library history either as someone who was philanthropically involved in the development of libraries or had the position of power as a king or as a person of great wealth. Also have talked about what I consider to be the smaller contributors, and by smaller I don't mean to diminish their contribution. These are the people that worked day in and day out in the field of library or in the preservation of books, and received very little credit, or it was very localized credit. And that's one of the reasons why I am discussing a few of the people, because they may not be as well known as they should be. I also wanted to switch genders for part 3 before I go on to my favorite person in library history. I want to look at two women who I have respected for a long time since I read about them, and share both of their contributions to the field of librarianship with you today. The first woman I want to talk about is Adelaide Haas, or Hesse. I've heard it pronounced both ways, and I've never really delved much deeper into figuring out how to pronounce it. It's Hasse is her last name. We're in the 20th century when she lived. She was born September 13th, 1868. She was born into a family of comfortable means. Her father was a physician, and she was born into a time where women had a very difficult time breaking out of the box to be allowed to do any formidable work, especially in the fields of management or supervisory duties. She worked for the government printing office, and this woman became the superintendent of documents library, the librarian. And to be in that position at the GPO was a real accomplishment. She was only there for 2 years, but during her 2 years, she set up that documents library. She devised the classification system for it, and it's still in use today. That's how brilliant her system was. She was totally in a man's world, and she handled it very, very well. She was well respected, and she was a great negotiator. Her biographers say that she had a talent for understanding the politics of the day and advancing. She began her career in librarianship, which lasted 60 years, at the age of 21. She started working at Los Angeles Public Library, and it was working with another woman librarian at the Los Angeles Public by the name of Tessa Kelso, where she developed her love of government documents. She was greatly encouraged by Kelso, and Kelso encouraged her to take the collection that was at the library in Los Angeles and devise a classification system for them. So she became a person of renown in this particular little niche. So after she was there for 6 years, and during that time she also helped reorganize the Santa Barbara and Pasadena public libraries, she was a great proponent of library training for professionals, and her use of the word professionals was the librarians that were involved in working in the libraries. When Congress enacted the superintendent, the office of the superintendent, excuse me, of documents, and that was a part of the government printing office. This was a big deal, and at that time Francis Crandall was appointed, and he looked at this overwhelming project, and he just couldn't fathom how he was going to accomplish this in a way that would gain him respect and also would serve the greater good. He had heard of Adelaide, and so he asked her to leave the Los Angeles Public Library and come to Washington, D.C. and take the office of First Librarian. Her duties were going to include taking all these scattered collections and putting them all in one place. By the time of her death in 1953, she was one of the most notable women in the profession. She taught at Catholic and George Washington universities, and one quote that I absolutely love from her is as follows: "Never forget that it is the spirit with which you endow your work that makes it useful or futile. Let us always work towards the end that the compensations of librarianship may at least be honorable, and that the true spirit of workmanship may be kept alive among us." Adelaide was quite the woman. The second person I want to talk about is Anne Carroll Moore. And Anne Carroll Moore was born in 1871. She was the only daughter among 8 children, and her father was a lawyer. And she was very, very well educated for a woman in that particular time in history. And she became a student of her father's studying the law. But sadly for women, when her father died, her studies ended. So in the following in 1892, after her father's death, she decides within a couple of years that she's going to go to library school. And so she enters the library school at Pratt Institute. And of course she graduates the following year, and she's now 25. The director of that school offers her a position as a children's librarian, and she takes it. And now her career is set, and her contributions will be many to the field of children's services and children's librarianship. Moore was recruited by the New York Public Library, and it had a central children's room at the New York Public Library, and she was hired, and she trained school librarians. She did all the collection. She oversaw the collection development, but she was very involved in it. And she also helped plan and design the children's rooms at the libraries in the surrounding neighborhoods. She extended borrowing privileges to children, and she made each child pledge the following: "When I write my name in this book, I promise to take good care of the books I use at home and in the library, and to obey the rules of the library." It instilled a sense of responsibility and a bond between the library and the child. I'm going to have to stop now because I want to keep this under 10 minutes, so we will change what I said about only having 3 parts, and we will go and we will have 4. So please join me on part 4. Thank you.